I can't use the truth as a cudgel. That's a lie. Like then the truth it's not the truth. It's truth as weapon. Really what I'm doing is beating her with the truth. If you lie habitually about something, that's the world you come to inhabit. And if you do that with enough heart, let's say, you can live in a delusion, and then your perception of the world doesn't match the world. That's like having a map of the wrong territory. Mm-hmm. That's a really good way to get lost, like seriously lost. And then you get lost like that, you get bitter, and then you get resentful, and then all the real hell starts to break out. So, it's a very bad idea.
It is. I see people do it all the time on social media. They lie about their background. They lie about what they own. They lie about past experiences. They lie about what happened in war, and they build this character. Mm-hmm. And I see it time and time again with I would say more than not the social media phenomenons, right?
And you think social media facilitates that?
I think it maybe, but where I'm going with this is then I see them get trapped. This has happened to friends of mine that build a character around themselves rather than just be themselves, and they get trapped in that character. Mm-hmm. And exactly what you were talking about, they get resentful and angry at the world and just having to put that false cloak on every day when you wake up. They go out into the world and it's a completely false person. Mm-hmm. And it follows them for years.
And the resentment, that's a very good aspect of that.
Where I'm going with this is one particular part of your tour that I went to, We Who Struggle with God. You were talking about pride. Mm-hmm. And where I'm going with this is they live this lie and they think that they're trapped, but they're only trapped because their ego won't allow them to come out and tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And they just dig themselves in deeper and deeper.
In the story of Exodus, the Egyptians are freed from the tyranny or the Israelites are freed from the tyranny of Egypt. But that tyranny has two elements, because the Pharaoh is a tyrant, but the Israelites are slaves. Like a tyrant needs a slave. So they're both morally culpable. The tyrant's culpable because he's a tyrant, and the slaves are culpable because they're slaves. It's a dance. So Moses comes along. He's speaking on behalf of God, and he opposes the tyrants, and then he frees the slaves, frees them. They cross the Red Sea, which is a bit of a catastrophe. But they end up not in the promised land. They end up in the desert. And the reason for that is that when you abandon your tyranny, you end up in the desert. That's why people stick pridefully. One of the reasons people stick pridefully to their erroneous presumptions. It's like once you've built that false character, you let it go. It's not like it's all good then. It's like, no, you're lost. And the Israelites, they're lost for 3 generations, right? So you may be so lost that you just can't get it back together in your lifetime, especially if you stick even more bitterly, let's say, to your pride. Because it's a real mystery. Imagine this. There's a pathway to enlightenment. Just imagine that might be the case. Of course, sages have said that forever. And you might say, well, why the hell wouldn't people just walk it then? If there's a pathway to enlightenment, that seems like a good deal. It's like, well, there's a lot of desert to wander through when you let go of your stupidity. And so people don't. They double down, which is what the Pharaoh does in the Exodus story, right? And he doubles down 10 times until he destroys the future and his own people. That happens all the time. People do that all the time in their lives. States do it. Nations do it.
I think it's sad. I have friends that do this, and I think I'm sad for them that they put on that false cloak every day, and it carries on for years and years and years. And I see them. I see how exhausted they are. I mean, and that is, with
it's very difficult to maintain a structure built on lies. Eh?
You lose track of them all.
Well, that's for sure. No kidding. No kidding. This is why in a marriage, it's just so much better just to say what you think. And, I mean, without telling the truth is complicated. You can't use the truth as a weapon. Like, if you're telling the truth, it's a multi-dimensional problem. Like if I'm talking to my wife, I have to talk to her in a way, I can't use the truth as a cudgel. That's a lie. Like then the truth it's not the truth, it's truth as weapon. Really what I'm doing is beating her with the truth. I'm looking for a club, not the truth.
Could you give me an example of that?
Well, maybe you're trying to sort something out, even about how things are working on the domestic front, who does what job. And maybe she's doing something that isn't up to scratch, let's say, with regard to the house. Well, you could try to address that as a problem to be solved, or you could use it as an opportunity to punish and trumpet your moral superiority. And you could say, well, I'm just telling the truth. It's like, yeah, well, you're not doing a very good job of it, because the truth would be, well, I need to tell you what I think, but I have to be around you tomorrow and next week, so I should try to tell you what I think in a way that isn't going to turn you against me. I guess there's something in that's something like minimal necessary force with regard to the truth. The truth has to serve the harmony of the relationship, as well as describing whatever the problem is that has to be solved. So I would say the same with children. If you're disciplining them, you want to do that in the spirit of love. And what does that mean? Well, the reason you're disciplining them isn't to lord it over them or to indicate your moral superiority, but to put a wall up to protect them, let's say, or to specify a pathway forward that they can walk down that would be productive. And if you're not doing that, well, then you're not serving the truth in the highest sense. And so that's why there's a religious insistence that truth has to serve love, that the two things are united. And love means care, I suppose. People often think that means the provision of security and safety, but love means encouragement too, right? In some ways, that's the distinction between the female role and the male role in a family, or feminine and masculine. The feminine tends to provide security and safety, and the masculine tends to encourage and challenge. And both those are aspects of love. And that's also the case within a relationship. I mean, you want to provide your wife and her to you a certain degree of security, but you want that allied with an optimal challenge because that facilitates development. And that's one of the things that lends life interest and adventure. So,
for somebody that is living a lie, how would you advise them to get back to baseline?
Well, I have a program online that's actually designed to deal with that problem. We put together, my colleagues and I, Daniel Higgins and Robert Peel. Robert Peel was my graduate supervisor at McGill, and Daniel was a student of mine at Harvard, and I've worked with these two for about 40 years now. We put together a series of writing exercises at a site called selfauthoring.com, and the past authoring program helps you write an autobiography, right? Break your life into 7 epochs, identify the events of emotional significance during those times, positive and negative, tell the story of your life, write it down as honestly as you possibly can. That's a good way of figuring out where you are. The next program in that series helps you identify your faults and your virtues in the present. So everybody has a temperament, and your temperament is going to provide you with opportunities. Like if you're extroverted, for example, you're going to be someone, you be tilted in a sales direction, so that's a benefit that comes along with that temperament. Extroverts can be narcissists as well. And so that would be the sin that would be associated with that temperament. And wherever you are in the temperamental landscape, you're going